He's got too much pine tar.
Sloppy jalopy. They were doing the Chris Davis fishing for it.
Might be going to call George Brett out.
Well, he's out.
Yes,
Brett is out. Look at this. Brett is out. And
Steve McMahon.
he is out and having to be forcibly restrained from hitting plate umpire Tim McClellan.
Too much pot tar.
Way too much pot tar.
And welcome back to another episode of Too Much Pod Tar. After not having any new episodes for a while, we were back. After kind of a month of not having episodes, but we are here to give you a World Series preview. With the Rays and Dodgers both winning in Game 7 of their championship series. To help me out with this preview, I have a few guests. I have frequent guest to the pod, Johnnie Black, who's a fellow writer at Primetime Sports Talk, and also Dodger fan Kevin Klein. He's a member of the Incline Dodgers podcast, and a couple of Rays fans as well. Ken Filler he writes for Tampa Bay Pro Sports. He writes about Rays, Lightning, and Buccaneers for that site, and also Joel Bailey from the UK. He writes for this site Four Bases. It's a UK based site for all baseball fans from the UK. So welcome to the show, guys. Excited to get started.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be here.
Thank you. Yes, excited.
Thank you. Greetings from London.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. So if everyone just wants to to say what their Twitter is, where you can find you and follow you on there, or any other social medias. Anybody can start. Just jump right in.
You can follow me on Twitter at Klein25, Klein, like Calvin Klein.
That's very smooth. You can follow me on Twitter at Joel Four Bases for the word, I guess, rather than the number.
And you can find me on Twitter at KRFiller64.
And you can find me on Twitter at JBall0202.
All right. Yeah. So everybody, follow these guys. And then myself, of course, I'm the host of this pod. So, where you to find me at Alex Keeler on Twitter. So there's also, as I said before, with me and Johnnie write for Primetime Sports Talk, we always have a lot of articles coming out for all the sports. And, football is big right now with fantasy and doing DFS as well. So that's been huge for us with these playoffs too. We've been doing breakdowns of doing recaps and also previews for each series, but also game previews as we did the championship series. And then we'll be doing the ones for the World Series games as well. But let's start off here, running down those championship series, and also, just going over how the teams got to the World Series. So starting off with the Dodgers, they swept in the wild card round. They swept the Brewers in 2 games. It was a best of 3 series this year for the wild card. And then they went on to sweep the Padres. The Slam Diego Padres, they kind of didn't show up in that series. They weren't very much slam. and of course, which finished with Game 7 last night. They took down the Braves in the championship series, coming back from a 3-1 deficit. And then Corey Seager with the MVP award with 5 home runs, 11 RBIs. That both of those were NLCS records, so very good series for him. So I don't know if you want to mention anything else about the whole Dodgers run to the World Series, Kevin.
I'll keep it brief. I remember when we did our preview show, seemed like a long time ago, maybe February or March, when we thought it was a 162 game season. We were both very high on Corey Seager. And we basically said he was going to have a big season, and he sure showed it, not only in the regular season, but with the NLCS. Very historic performance, so that was awesome to see as a big Seager fan.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I've seen a lot of your tweets about Dodger fans, in the off season, a lot of them were saying, "Oh, let's trade him for Lindor." I'm like, that was insane to me at the time, and now it's even more insane.
Yeah, exactly.
And then going to the Rays, they swept the Blue Jays in that wild card series, and then I have to sadly say that they obviously took down the Yankees in the division series in 5 games, and then of course ended in 7 games as well. Taking down the Astros and holding off the Astros 3-0 come from behind in the series. So, and then Randy Rosarena was the MVP in the series, 9 for 28 with 4 home runs, 6 RBIs. And it was his coming out party for him. Just kind of came out of nowhere and just tore it up for the Rays, and it's going to be a killer for the Rays and against sadly the Yankees and the rest of the American League East for years to come. So, and if you guys want to mention anything else about the Rays, Ken and Joel.
Well, I think the big key, especially going back to the Houston series, was the pitching. I mean, the Astros couldn't get much of anything going offensively really until Game 4. They hit the ball hard, but the Rays' defense was probably as good as I've ever seen a baseball team play defensively. Some of those catches in the outfield, the ground balls that were stabbed in the infield, I mean, the plays that were made were just unbelievable. And I think that you could see it kind of frustrated the Astros because they felt their approach to the plate was good. The ball just wasn't bouncing their way. And the pitching in that Astros series proved kind of what the Rays did all season. They had the 3rd best pitching behind, of course, the Dodgers led Major League Baseball, but the Rays had the 3rd best pitching in Major League Baseball, and they were able to shut down a good hitting team. So I'm really excited to see how they handle this Dodgers team in this upcoming World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I'd echo particularly the fielding and the defense is that the bats have been cold for probably the second half of the Yankee series and then the Astros series, and the defense actually sort of bailed out the offense, and it meant they didn't need to score 5 or 6 runs. Like the defense essentially scored us 5 or 6 alone, and I think that was probably the difference between me sitting here and a Houston fan sitting here. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, and about that defense too, the Dodgers also had big defense, especially Mookie Betts. He was huge in that series. Obviously, had that big robbage yesterday. So,
yeah, him and Cody Bellinger. I was giving a shout out to Kevin Kiermaier though. That guy is incredible. He seems to catch anything. But Cody Bellinger in center field, he made some pretty remarkable catches as well. And then Mookie Betts. He had that one that nearly hit the ground. Somehow his glove got under it. And then the guy was just jumping like he's Superman. So it's pretty cool.
Freddie Freeman lifts this one way up there. It's like Betts didn't see it at first. Now goes back. Jumps and he does it again. Mookie putting his stamp all over the NLCS defensively. How he times. This is a taller fence than center field. And he gets way up. He knew the timing. Once he tracked the ball, he knew if he jumped before the fence.
Just when I thought we'd escaped Betts. We've had 4 or 5 years of him hitting, and just when you think we've escaped him, he's back.
Yeah, I'm just glad he's not in the Red Sox anymore because I can actually love him because I liked him when he was on the Red Sox, but I kind of had to hate him because he was a Red Sox. But now
he's one of those players, regardless of the hat, everyone likes him. It's impossible not to like Mookie Betts. Like he's just he's an all-around solid guy and even better ball player.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now jumping into the World Series, just running down when each game is going to be. Every game is at 8:08 p.m. Eastern time. Game 1 is Tuesday, Game 2 is Wednesday, and then they have an off day on Thursday. Then Game 3 Friday, Game 4 Saturday, Game 5 Sunday, off day Monday, and then Game 6, Game 7 Tuesday and Wednesday. Obviously, Games 5 through 7 are if necessary, but I don't think it's going to end up being a sweep, but you never know. But I think it'll go at least 5, 6. But we could get more into that as we do each of our predictions at the end of the show. But yeah, Johnny, do you have anything else to add to their runs to the World Series?
Well, what surprises me is that, the Tampa Bay offense. I thought the Tampa Bay offense would be a little. They'd score a few more runs against the Astros pitching, but the Astros pitching has been pretty solid throughout the playoffs. Mixing and matching. Surprisingly enough, losing Verlander and losing Osuna going into the playoffs, I didn't have much hope for the Astros. Of course, they beat my Twins in 2 games, and their pitching was great because we scored 1 run in each game. But I just didn't think it would hold up. And I thought the Rays would actually score more runs. I mean, they wound up winning the series, but Houston's pitching was a little surprising to me. And the Rays, the fact that they aren't scoring a lot of runs is a little disturbing because they actually scored few of their runs were unearned thanks to Altuve making 3 errors in the series. The Dodgers aren't going to be like that. The Dodgers defense is a lot better than Houston's. And balls to the outfield to Betts and Bellinger and stuff like that. Seager at short, and even Justin Turner made a great play at third base yesterday with the double play. And they're not going to be able to capitalize. And this is what happens in the playoffs: is you capitalize on mistakes. If the Dodgers don't make those mistakes, Tampa Bay's hitting worries me for them going into the series. Now, the pitching, I think their pitching is better than Atlanta's. Atlanta had a lot of young guys. I think their bullpen's a lot better, and I think Kevin Cash knows his stable of pitchers well enough to know when to bring in guys and when to make a move and when to pull guys like Snell or Glasnow or someone like that. So I think his pitching is going to be better against the Dodgers. And the thing that worries me about the Dodgers is they explode for runs, but they'll go on runs 6-7 innings. They don't score anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be a matter of, can the Rays score enough runs and can the Dodgers score enough runs without having that one big inning, and I think the Rays pitching as opposed to the Braves are able to keep those horrible innings down. They keep those 4, 5, 6 run innings away. They'll give you 1 or 2 here and there. You get a home run, you get a base hit with 2 on or something like that, but they limit the damage. So it's going to be interesting to see what breaks,
Yeah, I think a huge key is going to be the bullpen management. And, Dave Roberts has, he obviously, Dodgers fan know how bad of a bullpen manager he's been in the past. And just, it's going to be a key for him to, put the right guys in the right spots. Game 7, I think he did a good job. He put the guys where they put the guys in when they in the right spots there. They had 3 shutout innings from Urias. He was right to keep him in, and obviously he proved it. So that was solid for that game at least. But moving into the World Series, it's going to be huge, especially with Kevin Cash's ability to maneuver through his bullpen, get those arms in. So as you move forward in the series, that's going to be what's going to be the key. I think the main key of who comes out on top in the series.
Okay, well, let's start with last season. These 2 teams met. I believe they split. I think they played 2 in Tampa and 2 in Los Angeles. And the one thing I do remember is Clayton Kershaw did face this Rays team at least once. He went 6 2/3. I think he allowed 1 or 2 runs, and he had 8 strikeouts. So I think he's going to be the Dodgers' Game 1 starter. Will he be at 100%? That's kind of the question a lot of Dodger fans are asking, and MLB in general. He was scratched right before his Game 2 start with some back issues. He did manage to pitch in Game 4 instead, and he was solid through 5, and then he kind of slipped into 6. I don't know if that was necessarily on Kershaw as much as just the Braves seeing him a third time around. So, I mean, if Kershaw is Kershaw, then the Rays are going to have to really score as many runs as they can and really rely on that bullpen, because I don't think the Dodgers offense is going to really be shut down most of the series. I'd be kind of surprised.
Yeah, I would be too. Yeah. And of course, Kershaw will be on normal rest for Game 1, so I think he'll be fresh and ready to go for them. And then the Rays, they announced their first 2 starters for the series: Tyler Glasnow for Game 1 and Blake Snell for Game 2, and both of those guys will be on regular rest as well. So, and I'd imagine that Walker Buehler will be the Game 2 starter for the Dodgers, and then probably Julio Urias in Game 3, and then against Morton, somewhere along that line. Speaking of Urias, he's been, I mentioned the 3 perfect innings in Game 7, and he's been overall this postseason. He's been huge out of the bullpen for them.
Yes.
4.0, 0.56 ERA, 16 strikeouts. So
he's been one of the 2 big X factors out of the bullpen for sure. He was a starter. Well, he's been in the bullpen in the past in the postseason, but this season he was a regular season starter. Mm-hmm. But then they had to, find ways to create outs. So Urias was that guy. And yeah, you said it. He's been nails so far. The Game 1 wild card game against the Brewers, I think that really set the tone for the rest of that series, and he's just carried it over.
Yeah.
Charlie Morton's been pretty damn solid in his playoff career too, and he shut down the Dodgers in 2017. I mean,
yes.
So that's that. If that's the game, if those are the Game 3 starters, Morton against Urias, that it's going to be an interesting battle, especially if it's 1-1. I mean, it's it's going to be crazy because I think Morton's given up 1 run in like 19 innings in his postseason career.
Yeah,
so Morton's just been lights out.
Yeah, this postseason, Morton's 3-0 with a .57 ERA, and he didn't pitch anywhere near that great, in the regular season. Of course, he had a couple of injuries. He was 2-2 with an ERA above 4, but he's been just lights out in the postseason. And Snell's done a good job. Snell's 2-2 with a 3.2 ERA. Glasnow's kind of struggled a bit. If you talk about the Rays bullpen, the one guy that's kind of surprising to me with his performance has been Nick Anderson. Nick Anderson was a guy in the regular season that gave up 5 hits and had a .55 ERA. And in the postseason, he's given up 11 hits already in 11 innings and has an ERA up around 8, given up a couple of home runs in the Houston series. So I would hope that he can get some pitches corrected so he can go back to being the Nick Anderson of the regular season, because without him, that bullpen's not nearly as strong as it was during the regular season. He's got to get back into top form.
Yeah,
he's been the one bad spot in the Rays bullpen out of all of them. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. And I was just going to say about Anderson, I couldn't agree more about sort of him in the postseason. And so I'm just looking at, he struck out 44% of batters during the regular season, and he faced 21 hitters against Houston and didn't strike 1 out. All his outs were fly outs, ground outs, etc. Whether that is the fact that Houston have had a look on him, they faced him obviously last year in the playoffs, last year in the regular season, and actually maybe the hitters have sort of prepared for him more than LA would be, or is it a more sort of worrying issue surrounding Anderson? Because I know his velocity has been down just a tick this year, but I think he is one of the sort of big storylines for the postseason. About when he comes in, everyone assumes that actually it's good, and actually the Rays are probably going to win that inning and get out of the jam. Whereas actually, it's been a little more hairy than I guess us Rays fans would have liked within the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How long does Urias go, do you think?
Urias can easily go 5 innings, especially if he's on normal rest. His season high, I believe, was 6 2/3 innings, and I think that was actually against the Padres during the regular season. But game 3, I believe he pitched 5 innings against the Braves, and then, he managed to come out in game 7 and pitch 3 out of the pen, as Alex had already mentioned. So, I mean, it's just going to depend. If they need him out of the pen in games 1 or 2, then that'll definitely play a factor in the rest of the series for sure. There's 2 other key starters that I'll touch upon, but I'll let Alex say something real quick.
I was just going to say, too, that, it's definitely going to be key for, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the if they bring starters like Urias out of the bullpen in the first couple of games, or with the Rays, if they decide to bring somebody out of the bullpen that would maybe potentially start a game 3 or 4, like if they need to go that route. So definitely going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, so the thing with Walker Buehler is this entire postseason he's been pitching with a blister, and that's definitely affected his control. The first 2 outings against the Brewers and the Padres, he only managed to go 4 innings, and that was kind of why they had to bring starters out of the pen just to get those outs. But then he really came to what we all know as Walker Buehler is that big game pitcher. Game 6, he went 6 innings, allowed no runs. So he's definitely turning the corner, and he's a guy to watch out for in the World Series. He's done it before. He was a first-round pick out of Vanderbilt. Teams passed on him because he had on surgery, but Andrew Friedman knew better. And, this is kind of like the Andrew Friedman showdown series because that's where he's from. He was the architect originally in Tampa Bay and then joined the Dodgers. So I don't know how many players left over in Tampa were as a result of Friedman, but, his mark is definitely left one way or another.
I completely agree with that, Kevin. And I actually think that there's a lot of pressure on Buehler to go relatively deep in his starts because if you see Urias, Gonsolin, and May as bullpen arms, I guess some will start. They won't always, but they will get work out the bullpen. There's a lot of outs which need to come from those 3 if it's just Kershaw and Buehler. And actually, well, if they're going to be fresh for their starts, and actually, if Urias, if he goes 5, he's going to need Buehler to go 6, and if Buehler only goes 4, then that impacts massively in sort of games 3 and 4 about who starts, who pitches when, and sort of the butterfly effect and the collateral knock-on damage of Buehler, not maybe walking 3 or 4 and actually having to pitch another inning just in walks. I think that is a huge sort of subplot within the series, and actually sort of who pitches when and the development of how the series pans out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's a great point because it definitely, especially these guys, the past few series have been day after day after day. There's no off days. At least in the World Series, they put in it's 2-3-2 like it normally is. And so you have that built-in off day, but it was just the same as yesterday. With game 7 with the Dodgers, part of the reason Roberts didn't bring in Jansen is because he pitched in game 5 and game 6. So he left Urias in. Now, yes, Urias was dominating, and you have to wonder, he obviously trusts Jansen because he threw him in game 5 and game 6, but on 3 days in a row. Now, at least he has the luxury of not having to do that because of the built-in off days. Whereas the past few series, there were no off days. It was just straightforward, which taxes the depth. And that's why I think you see the Rays and the Dodgers in the World Series now, is because of the depth of both their bullpens.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other guy I do want to bring up, and his name was just said briefly a minute ago. It's Dodgers rookie right-hander. I don't know how the Rays do against high heat velocity. Maybe you guys can answer that in a second. But this guy throws a sinker, two-seamer, and it can spin out 101 miles an hour tops, and he's already done that multiple times in the postseason. He hasn't really gotten his fair opportunity to start yet because Roberts has needed to bring him out of the pen. So usually when he has been starting for the Dodgers, it's 1 to 2 innings tops. But hopefully with the rest day now and maybe another rest day when the series actually begins, we're going to actually get to see the Dustin May that we all saw during the regular season, where he can go 5-6 innings. Hopefully he can easily strike out 8 batters. He induces a lot of weak contact and double plays when needed. So this is a guy I'm really high on. He's one of the Dodgers' he was one of the top prospects. A lot of teams wanted to trade for him. And so far, he's shined for them. He even started opening day when Kershaw had to be scratched, had a big game against the Giants. And I mean, even in the postseason, his control has been a little wonky, not as sharp as we'd like it to be. But it's a new series, new team, and I think Dustin May is going to be the guy to shine in the World Series.
Do you think he has do you think he has sort of a standard start, like a classic starting role within the series? I'm intrigued. Like, does he go 4, 5, 6 innings, or is he going to work solely as an opener or out of the bullpen, do you think? Like your gut instinct.
If he's not needed in games 1 or 2, then in game 3, if that's when he's going to start, we don't know with Roberts. It's always like a last-minute decision when he makes those game 3 starters. Right. It literally can be the day of. But if May is on 3-4 days rest, and then he should be able to get in a full start. I don't see why not.
The whole situation, I'm not sure. Like, do you have an answer for like why he was even the starter in Game 7? Because I thought they would have went with Gonsolin, and then they went to him anyway. So why didn't they just start with him?
So it was reported that Roberts was tossing and turning all night long and got like 3 hours of sleep consecutively, and then that day of, he changed his mind and went with May because he wanted May to be in a spot where he knew who he was facing and what inning it would be. That was literally his logic.
That's an interesting reasoning.
Wow. Yeah.
Surely that applies to inning 2 as well. If you get through inning 1, all right, then.
Yeah.
Well, at least it didn't come back to bite him.
Yeah,
because that could have been a huge inning for the Braves. That double play was huge for them.
Yeah, I won't go too much into the Braves because we're talking about the World Series, but there were a lot of opportunities where the Braves could have put the Dodgers away, and they failed. The Justin Turner double play, that was some of the worst base running I've ever seen in the postseason.
Yeah, that was me playing MLB The Show right there.
And then last but not least, the other potential starter, he didn't pitch in the wild card in NLDS, but Tony Gonsolin did see a lot of work in the NLCS. Didn't look as sharp as I'd like to see. He didn't really pitch too deep in either outing, but he throws a very nasty splitter, and during the regular season, he was one of our best starters. He had an ERA under 2, and I mean, every outing he was just phenomenal. So this is a guy who also doesn't give up a lot of hits. So if he's got his fair rest and he's sharp, this is another weapon for the Dodgers.
Yeah. And then another bullpen arm that is going to be big as well, who's been really consistent. Blake Trinan as well. He had 2 shutout innings in Game 7 as well right before Urias came in. So he's another guy that's going to be a big arm for them to come out of the bullpen whenever needed. Like he was, he pitched, what was it? It was inning 4 and 5, I believe.
Yes.
So
it was. Yeah, and I think he was the pitcher with that the double play we were just talking about. Induced the weak contact and got the 2 outs. This is a guy Roberts has leaned on heavily all season long. So I don't see how it changes in the World Series. We're so close to the finish line. If Trinan's got to pitch every day, then so be it. I can't believe the Oakland Athletics just let this guy go, but we gladly love him here.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Johnny, were you going to say something?
No, I was just gonna mention, like, I mean, it's sorry, it's interesting to see how, excuse me, it's interesting to see how, like, the game has changed so much. Like, it used to be, like, now you have the two starters like Snell and Glasnow and Kershaw and Bueller, and then after that it's like, okay, we'll have this guy, maybe he'll pitch 3 innings, maybe he'll pitch 4 innings. The game used to be like, all right, here are my 3 starters. That's it. They're going to go 8. And nowadays it's completely different, and it kind of gives these managers a lot of flexibility. And the fact that Kevin Cash has been with Tampa for a little while, Dave Roberts has been with the Dodgers for a while, like I said before, with Cash, with his, his pitchers, he knows his pitchers. And he knows who he can mix and match. And it's not always, when you're thinking about like the starters, I think with these guys, it's not always, it's who you match the starter with the next guy. When you have a lefty and then you pitch a righty, or you have a righty lefty or whatever, or different types of pitching styles. If some guy has a great sinker and another guy has a great four-seamer, you match them up because you're going to change the eye level of the hitters the second, third time around, even whether it's lefty or righty. So I think it's interesting to see these kind of like, how they mix and match the pitchers as far as like starting May and then going with Urias or something like that. It's interesting to see how they're going to mix and match.
So who are the other key relief pitchers for the Tampa Bay Rays that everyone should be aware of?
Yeah, so just sort of jumping off the back of the previous point about the use of the bullpen, and Kevin Cash is sort of using the bullpen and the relief pitchers in complete reverse of how sort of baseball logic says, if your closer comes in at the end and your setup guy comes in before the closer, and sometimes you have a bridge between the starter and whatever. Actually, we now go to the closer following the starter on the assumption that actually that the closer is, by theory or baseball sort of logic, your best relief pitcher. So you bring him in to face the top of the lineup, which is deemed to be the best hitters of the opposing team, which it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. You don't want your best pitcher pitching at the catcher, the centre fielder, and whatever in the 7, 8, 9 slots. You want him pitching at Bregman, you want him pitching at Betts, whatever. So we've started bringing Nick Anderson in off the back of the starter and then working it backwards to sort of use Castillo or Alvarado as your sort of setup guy, and he can face 4, 5, 6 hitters, and then you finish it off with I guess technically a bridge guy like a Fairbanks or a Loop or someone like that to get the final outs, and then that is a purely matchup based decision on lefty, righty, whatever. But it's sort of flipped all sort of baseball wisdom and normal convention about when your closer comes in, and it's just a very interesting sort of MO, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Joel. Cash has managed this postseason perfectly, except for Game 6. I thought he took Snell out a little bit too early. He went to Castillo, and Castillo just imploded. And it was everything Cash tried in that game just backfired on him. But outside of that one game, he has had the pulse of his bullpen, and he's brought the guys in at just the right time. Ryan Thompson is another guy that you want to pay attention to. He's usually the first or second guy to come in sometimes. He's a sidewinder and get the hitters off balance. Aaron Slagers has come in, done a decent job. Alvarado is back now. He makes me a little nervous sometimes when when he pitches. But yeah,
you and me both.
Yeah, he's got some heat, and has had some success in the past. So you package him, with Castillo, and then you bring in Fairbanks to close it, and and then let's not forget Anderson. Anderson, his fastball's in the upper 90s. He even hits 100 miles an hour a lot of times. So he gets his act together, and the Rays bullpen is very solid. And the other thing, too, is the Rays have about 8 guys that close games. They never had a designated closer all season. You look at their roster. Anderson had a couple of saves. Castillo, Fairbanks, Thompson, Luke, Slagers. As Joel said, doesn't matter. Kevin Cash is very unconventional, and he's made all the right moves so far. So let's hope it continues for the next 7 games.
Nice.
Yeah, it's amazing that probably 3/4 of the bullpen are only there because of injuries as well. And actually, sort of, if everyone was healthy, sort of none of these guys would actually be there. And actually, it would be Poche, it would be Drake, it would be Chaz Rowe, it would be Chirinos who would be pitching out the bullpen. You'd probably have Brendan McGay. Like, it's amazing that this is in reality sort of a AAA bullpen, and how good they've been and how much they've stepped up to the plate. And they've been one of, if not baseball's best bullpen, whilst not actually sort of being a collection of major league relievers, or by trade major league relievers.
Kevin Cash is probably my favorite manager in Major League Baseball. He just seems like a genius. But 2 relievers that I want to cover for the Dodgers just really quick that I think will play a major role in this series. Victor Gonzalez is the first. He's a lefty, new to the team. He almost quit baseball, I think, a couple years ago. But then the Dodgers brought him on, helped regain his confidence, and now he's been a force out of the pen. He can pitch 2 to 3 innings too, induces a lot of soft contact. And then Brusdar Graterol, this guy brings the hype. He probably had my favorite moment of the postseason against the Padres when Tatis Jr. hit what would have been, I think, a 3-run or a grand slam off Graterol, but Bellinger was able to make the leaping catch to rob him of the home run, which then led to Graterol throwing his hat in the air, celebrating. Yeah. And then ultimately on the other side, Manny Machado started crying and was yelling at him for basically, celebrating an awesome out, even though Machado earlier that game did one of his bat flip taunts. So it was just funny to see that.
Yeah, that's one of the problems in the game today. Like, you're doing all these bat flips and stuff, and then they get mad about a pitcher celebrating. It's like, if you want to celebrate, let the kids play, then you got to have both sides of it. Like, pitcher can celebrate when he strikes somebody out or somebody makes a big play. And same thing for hitting a home run. You can do a bat flip. You can celebrate. Just don't go too crazy and get in someone's face about it. But
yeah.
I bet Graterol is probably quite relieved that the Red Sox pulled out of that trade with Betts, and instead of playing for the 4th pick in the draft, he's playing in the World Series.
They didn't want a guy who can throw over 100 miles per hour and has future closer written all over it. Very weird flex on their part.
I was happy with the trade because the Twins are the ones that traded him. I'm a Twins fan.
Yeah.
No, but I was happy with it. Give me Kenta Maeda with $4 million a year. I'm fine.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll trade you a reliever. Because Graterol is never going to be a starter. He just doesn't have the stuff for it. He doesn't have the secondary pitches. He throws hard. The problem with Graterol that I see when I watch him pitch, everything's straight.
Yeah, he
throws 100. That's great, and he's a big boy. But I don't know. He just doesn't. For someone who throws 100, he doesn't get strikeouts.
Right. Yeah, I noticed
he allows
that too.
Contact, and that I think is going to be a problem. And that was one of the things with the Astros I talked about in one of my articles originally, like when they played the Twins, is that the Astros don't strike out. They put the bat on the ball. Now, the Rays play great defense, so they were able to get out of that series in 7. The Dodgers also do too. And, not to go on about the Astros, but I'm just saying, if you put the bat on the ball, sometimes good things happen. And for someone like Graterol and even Dustin May, who's not a big strikeout pitcher, great movement. I love his deception and his delivery and everything like that. But people put the bat on the ball. And like I said, with the Rays defense, the Dodgers have to be the same. The Dodgers have to be solid on the defense because the Rays will put the bat on the ball against May, against Graterol. against guys like that. Yeah, Buehler's going to get his strikeouts, Kershaw, and stuff like that. But it's just to make sure the defense is there, because some of these guys don't miss bats. And that's what always worried me about Gratterall, not just the surgery he had and like the arm problems he had already, but the fact that he doesn't miss bats at 101 miles an hour. There's a problem there. He reminds me a lot of Nathan Eovaldi. Reminds me a lot of him. Because Eovaldi was the same way.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the Dodgers didn't need starting pitching. That's why they shipped out Maeda, and then they traded Ross Stripling for a prospect midseason. And we got a lot of good guys coming up. So, yeah, you're right about Gratterall. I noticed his whiff rate is pretty low, and that's what he's got to work on.
Yeah. It's a shame. Obviously, Price opted out, isn't it? It would be such a good series if Price was pitching against.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm ready to talk bats if we want to move to that.
There ain't much to talk about from the Rays standpoint.
Well, all right. Well,
yeah, we can.
There's a lot to talk about with the Dodgers.
We'll give it our best.
I can keep it quick.
Yeah.
We
can start with the Rays, yeah.
Yeah, you have two guys that have really carried the team this postseason: Randy Arozarena and Manuel Margot. This postseason, Arozarena has 7 home runs, and that's as many as he hit the whole month of September. Driven in 10 runs, hitting .382. Although Margot's average is .256, he's been clutch. 5 homers, 11 runs batted in. He's gotten the big hit when they've needed it. So those two guys have to keep their bats hot. The biggest disappointment has been Brendan Lau. He was my offensive MVP during the regular season. Hit 14 homers, drove in 37 runs. When they needed a hit, he got the hit. Home runs, singles, doubles, you name it, he was hitting the ball all over the field. In the postseason, he is hitting 115. He has 6 hits and 52 at-bats, 1 home run. I think if the Rays maybe even want to have a chance to win this series, he has got to get going. I'm not saying he's got to put up numbers like Arozarena and hit close to 400, but he's got to contribute more than what he has been doing. And if you just look at the Rays' offense, here's their everyday players and what they are hitting in the postseason. Joey Wendell's hitting .235, Willie Adames 132, Kiermaier 194, Meadows 114, Diaz 125, Renfroe 200. That's not going to get you a World Series champion kind of numbers. So I think the key is Brendan Lau, Margot stays hot, Arozarena stays hot, and these other guys, they have to start contributing if the Rays want to have a chance to win this thing.
Yeah.
What about
completely agree? Sorry,
Hunter Renfroe. Do you think he will be a factor in this series? And the reason I bring him up is we saw a lot of him as a former Padre, and last season he had a walk-off grand slam off Kenley Jansen. So he's hit some bombs off the Dodgers, I wanted your thoughts on him.
He's been inconsistent in the postseason. He did hit a grand slam in Game 2 of the series against the Blue Jays that kind of sealed the deal for the Rays. He's hit a couple of solo shots in the postseason, but again, him and Meadows, it's been really disappointing to see how they've swung the bat. Now defensively, I think it was Game 4. He made some outstanding plays out there in the outfield, and he literally robbed the Astro hitters of extra bases. So he's very good with the glove out there. But is he going to hit? I mean, that's the $1 million question. I mean, who knows? The Rays got him to hit more than 200 and hit more than 1 or 2 home runs. I mean, he hit 30, 32, 33 last year in San Diego.
Yeah.
So he's capable. We've seen what he can do in flashes. We just haven't seen it consistently. And, he's another guy that, we're hoping can contribute and swing the bat well.
I think he'll almost certainly start tomorrow against Kershaw. But yeah, So, yeah, I think just off the back of that, particularly with Lau and Meadows, it wouldn't surprise me if they got quite creative with the batting lineup and sort of the order and actually protecting them and giving them something to hit and maybe sandwiching them a Rosarina between the two. And actually, well, if you're going to pitch, if you're going to pitch around a Rosarina, then you need to pitch to one or the other and actually sort of putting them in the position to have good at bats and actually pitches to hit. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if either led off tomorrow or game 2-3. But I would like to say something about Willie Adames. I don't know if any of you guys follow me on Twitter. I'm a bit of an Adames fanboy, and something which is quite interesting about sort of the postseason and the Rays. He's hit 132 this postseason, which on the face of it is horrendous. Okay, but he's walked 13 times. That's more than every other hitter in the Ray has hits apart from Rosarina. So he's getting on base, and actually, if he can get on base, sort of in the 7-8 hole in front of a Zunino, and actually we've talked about Zunino already, and if he can get back to ball, which is always a challenge with Zunino, then there's a chance of a big inning coming because the guys in front of him do get on base, but not with a base hit. So I think although they're not hitting, they are getting on base, and we're just missing the big hit. We only seem to be scoring in sort of single run home runs, 1-run homers or whatever. Actually, the big inning hasn't come yet.
Yeah, speaking of big inning, one stat that jumped off the page to me is that the Rays are hitting 174 with runners in scoring position in the postseason.
Gee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about right. Yeah, they I don't know whether they're putting too much pressure on themselves or they're pressing. As that Houston series wore on and we got into games 5 and things weren't going their way, and then game 6, I mean, you could see, they just weren't as relaxed and as loose as, they needed to be just to let the game come to them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. They have to do a better job with runners in scoring position, or it's going to be, an early exit for the Rays team. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to they're gonna have to rely more on going back to small ball and stuff and getting the runners over, moving the runners over, getting the run in on a sac fly or a ground ball through a hole. Just not rely so much on the home run. I know they hit more home runs than the Yankees in that series, and then I believe more than the Astros. So, but sometimes that comes back. You can't always try to hit the home run and create more runs a different way. So,
right.
I think there's a chance Kiermaier could end up hitting. They'd put Zunino up to 8, and Kiermaier hits 9th, just as a bit of hopefully speed on the base pads before sort of a Rosarina comes back around. And actually, well, hopefully a base hit can score someone with a bit of sort of natural speed on the bases.
Teams have been successfully running on the Dodgers all postseason long, and I'm not sure how, but as a Rays fan, that's one thing to definitely look out for is if one of your guys reach first base, I think they'll attack with steals.
No one steals bases anymore. What are you talking about? No one steals bases anymore. But that's the sure way of getting, when you get a walk. Everything is on base percentage now. Yeah. And when you get on base via the walk,
stay on base. Yeah.
Steal second. Why not? Especially if this is going. Once you get to the World Series, you're talking about, pitching. No one scored. You look at the Rays Houston series. Houston in game 6, they scored 7 runs. This is the only game in the series that either team scored more than 5. Mm-hmm. Now you had the Dodgers series where the Dodgers blew up, scored 11 runs in 1 inning, and then the next game the Braves scored 10. So you had the blow up innings and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, for the Rays to play their game, it's defense, pitching, and playing the small ball, getting those runs, getting that walk with 1 out, stealing second, driving in that run with 2 outs. These are the things that the Rays are going to have to do because all their hitters are hitting 200 or below. So you can't count on the 3-run homer, can't count on the 2-run homer at that point because no one's getting on base.
Yeah, and to that point, I'd say real quick, Globe Life Field, which the Dodgers have now played 2 consecutive series in, and I know the Rays haven't because they've been in California. This is the dimension of this ballpark. I was even surprised how big it actually makes this park feel. There were a lot of close to hit home runs that just died out in like 411 feet or so. So that's just another little thing.
And they've
it's a pitcher's park. It's a pitcher's park in that sense.
Yeah.
So as it feels now, like this first year being in that park, but it's definitely a pitcher's park. So Tampa Bay and the Dodgers should both be used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, Dodger Stadium's it's a pitcher's park. If you had to, it's kind of neutral. Yeah, and then you have the Trop, which is like a mausoleum. So, I mean, so that's a pitcher's park. It's the one pitcher's park in the AL East. So both teams should be used to it.
The whole stolen base thing too. Somebody better steal a base because I need my free taco.
Yeah.
It's so insane with the stolen base anymore, man. Yeah. No one steals bases anymore. No one takes that extra base. It's crazy.
And then they have base running, and you can't even run the bases anymore because they have base running blunders last night.
Yeah. Well, these guys got to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, the Dodgers offense is exciting to talk about, so hopefully they show up in this series. I mean, it starts with the guy you guys are familiar with in Mookie Betts, who's played 97 games against Tampa, 310 lifetime hitter, 16 home runs, 28 doubles. So, I mean, obviously I wasn't watching those games because I was focused on my team, but I just want to get a quick overview of what it feels like to watch this guy play.
So now he's going to go 0 for 16. You just jinxed him. He's going to go 0 for 16 in the first 4 games, and the Dodgers will be swept. That's it.
Oh, man.
See, you just jinxed them.
I don't know about swept. 16, they still win.
Well, yeah, he's coming off a pretty good series. He had a 387 on base percentage with only 1 RBI, so I'll jinx him now, I guess. I think he's due for a big series because he didn't really have the big hit in the last round. And then Corey Seager, he was hitting at one point over 400 in the NLCS, but it dropped down to 310. That 5 home runs, 11 RBIs, as mentioned. He's just been on fire. Justin Turner, he hit 280 with 1 home run as well in the last series. And then Cody Bellinger, who's kind of been hit or miss all season long, even though he was the reigning NL MVP. He still had an 875 OPS with 2 home runs, including the go-ahead home run last night off Chris Martin in the 7th.
8th pitch has been the magic one tonight. This time he hits the ball to deep right field. Cody Bellinger has done it, and the Dodgers win in Game 7.
So, I mean, Cody Bellinger easily could be the World Series MVP just because he has that upside. And when you get right-handers against him, I mean, it's fair game. I'm not trying to diss Glasnow or anything, but I don't know. I think that could be a good matchup for Bellinger. So we'll see moving forward. Jock Peterson, who was pretty much a walking zombie all regular season. We call him Jocktober, and he arose to the occasion once again. He had a 389 average. He had a big home run in that 11-run outburst in that first inning off Kyle Wright. Kike Hernandez, who's just a utility guy, he had 2 big solo home runs. And then Will Smith, 500 OPS, which, I mean, on paper looks like he was struggling, but he did have 7 huge RBIs, and he was robbed of a few hits as well. So he easily could have been more productive than what you'll see on paper. And then Max Muncy, who's kind of been struggling with the strikeouts all season long. Some of that may be due to his minor injuries with his hand, but this guy still has immense power as well, and he even hit a grand slam, part of that same 11-run outburst. So there's a lot of big bats for the Dodgers, and Austin Barnes is likely going to be the catcher for Clayton Kershaw just because it's been that way all season long, and even he hit 500 throughout the postseason so far, a guy you wouldn't expect. And then with runners in scoring position, just to add to that, they hit 276, which was a little below their season average, believe it or not, when they hit 291 with runners in scoring position. But number one offense in baseball, 118 home runs over 60 games. That just sounds crazy. They were first in home runs, second in OPS. So it's a very deep lineup. And I mean, I didn't even bring up former all-stars like AJ Pollock, who he's been slow so far this whole postseason.
But wasn't this the same situation that the Dodgers were in last year? When they got to the postseason, they were first in runs, first in our ERA, first in everything. And what happened?
The difference in that series, though, the Dodgers had a 3-0 lead in that Game 5, and we were in the 8th inning, and Roberts went with Kershaw, which led to 2 home runs, and I think that's what killed them.
Well, it wasn't just that one game, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's a tough call because the Dodgers have all this hitting. They have all the talent in the world. It's obvious. I mean, they on paper they are the best team. They have been the best team in the major leagues probably the past 4 years.
Yeah,
but it just hasn't translated.
No.
It's into a 7-game series.
Translated with an asterisk because I will say
True.
we were the best
all right,
team.
I'll give you that. I will
2017
give you that. I will give you that. I will give you that.
What happened in 2017?
Did I miss something?
I'll give you that.
Honestly, I think if the Dodgers don't win this series, Dave Roberts has to go. I don't like. He has all this talent and he can't win a World Series. Like he has like the best team on paper and it just hasn't been able to get over the hump. I mean, if they can't do it this year, I think they have to find something new for their manager. But yeah, I don't know what route they go.
I don't know about that.
I don't know what route they go.
I don't know about that. I mean, what do you do? Like the Yankees did the same thing with Girardi.
Yeah.
I mean, they made the playoffs like every year. They always had a winning record, and they got rid of Girardi. What has Aaron Boone done? He didn't get any further than Girardi did. What does it help by getting rid of the manager? Do you think getting rid of the manager all of a sudden makes the team perform better in a 7-game series? I mean, a lot of baseball is luck. A lot of it is. And there are teams that have been so great. I mean, you look at the Braves in the 90s and stuff like that. The great pitching they had. They won 1 World Series. They won the NL East 14 years in a row. And they won 1 World Series. Does that mean Bobby Cox should have been gone after 1983? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think Dave Roberts does an excellent job with the Dodgers. And I think they have a ton of talent. They still have a ton of talent coming along. They'll be able to replace Muncy and Turner and guys like that and Kershaw, like once they are gone, in the next year or two.
Yeah. I mean,
Bellinger, Betts. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think replacing the manager after a World Series run, just because you lost the World Series, I don't know. I don't think it's. I don't think it's the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can agree to disagree, but this kind of backs Alex's point about Dave Roberts. It doesn't come down to the Dodgers losing necessarily. It always comes down to Dave Roberts making the wrong big game decision. And this has happened now 3 seasons in a row. And, I know it's like kind of a scapegoat to blame the manager, but that honestly has what it's really come down to. It's always going to be Dave Roberts' decision-making that whether it succeeds or it backfires.
Well, it's kind of like
you obviously. Yeah.
It's kind of like with the Cubs in 2016 too. With Joe Madden's managing wasn't that great in that World Series, and they kind of, which our friend Joey from Primetime, he always kind of says that they won in spite of him. Like they won that series in spite of Joe Madden. Just kind of his bullpen management wasn't great and all that. So it's kind of similar situation, I think.
You obviously know it a lot more than I do, Kevin, and follow it a lot more closely. But sometimes it feels like the Dodgers players are sort of immune to accountability and criticism. And actually, their shortcomings in the postseason, it's easy to dump it at Dave's door rather than their own. And actually, big players have gone cold in the last few years in the postseason, but actually, it's easier to blame the manager than it is to blame the player from the fan standpoint. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But that's always been my sort of perception, is that it's sort of the on-trend and vogue thing to do is blame Dave for a bullpen decision than it is blame superstar for hitting 200.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a yes and no. Like a lot of the younger guys, I mean, like Seager and Bellinger last year, they were pretty quiet. But then you had the veteran Kershaw, who he didn't blame anyone except himself, which is pretty big considering he's a starting pitcher, not what he used to be. The moment got to him, whatever, the 2 home runs, but he only blamed himself, which is pretty speaking volume. And then now we have Mookie Betts, who's really changed the entire complexion of the locker room. It was a Dansby Swanson double or something, but Mookie Betts took responsibility. He said that was on him. So, the attitude has shifted somewhat.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
I don't think Dave Roberts has done a bad job. I think he's, it goes with any sport. You can look at basketball, baseball, hockey, and football. When you have superstar players, there's a different atmosphere in your locker room. There's a different way to coach. Dave Roberts, it has superstar players. He has Mookie Betts. He has Cody Bellinger. He has Clayton Kershaw. He's got guys who are great, all-time great in the midst of their careers right now. And people think that I think the general fan thinks it's easy to coach these players and easy to keep the rest of the locker room together. Just like you would say, all right, Phil Jackson, he had Michael Jordan. Of course he's going to win 6 rings in basketball. He's got Michael Jordan. Yeah, well, what about the other 11 guys? Like Belichick. He's got Brady. What about the other 52 guys? Like, it's not – I don't think it's as easy as people think. And I think Dave Roberts has done a great job being in one of the biggest markets, suffering the losses of the past few years, and still doing his thing and getting his team back to the World Series this year. I think that speaks a lot to the character of Dave Roberts. I think a lot of fans don't see it. They don't realize it. And his decisions with the bullpen, decisions are great when they work out. But when they don't work out, of course, the hindsight's 20/20. You look back on it, you're like, well, why'd you bring this guy in? Because it was the right move. It didn't work out. So I think Dave Roberts honestly gets kind of a bad rap. Now, I'm not in LA and I don't watch the games all the time, so I'm not going to speak. Kevin, you have more of a knowledge of this on a day-to-day basis than I do. But I'm just speaking in general, from the general public perspective, that I think a lot of people blame the manager / coach for things they shouldn't be blamed for. Just because the player doesn't produce, you put them in a position. The player doesn't produce whilst the manager made that call.
Yeah, I agree.
Why is the manager blamed?
And it's LA too. I mean, it's a tougher city to manage just because, I mean, we've had Tommy Lasorda in the past, who's a Dodger manager legend. And then Phil Jackson, of course, with the Lakers. So, I think it's hard in any sport in Los Angeles just to be a coach, just because there's higher expectations.
Yeah,
You just expected to win, and that's it. That's the bottom line. Just win. It's like Al Davis said. Just win, baby.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Just win, baby. And that's what it comes down to. And in any major market, like LA, Boston, I'm up here in Boston. I'm in the Boston area. But I grew up in New Jersey across from New York City. So New York, Boston, Chicago, like major cities like that. Yes. Win or go home.
Yeah.
And that's, unfortunately with baseball, it doesn't always work out that way because it's very random.
Yeah. It's so much more than just managing a baseball team, isn't it? It's managing expectation, it's managing egos, it's managing personalities. Like personalities, these guys spend more times with the first baseman than they do with their wives, and actually it's managing the day-to-day lives of 25 people and a city. And it's so much more than just managing a baseball game, and actually who's gonna hit for, who's gonna pitch in this inning, and who's gonna field at shortstop. Like there is so much to actually manage on a personal level away from baseball.
Right.
Guys, I just have a bit of breaking news. Clayton Kershaw is going to start Game 1.
Wow.
That's my
officially, yeah.
Officially, so Kershaw against Glasnow, Game 1.
It's going to be an exciting matchup.
Yes.
But if you guys, I think we mentioned all the what you wanted to say about the Dodgers lineup. So want to go into like predictions here about how this series is going to go. I mean, obviously, I know you guys are probably going to go with your teams, but we'll still going to go run through this. Me and Johnny obviously aren't Dodger or Rays fans, so we'll have different opinions. But yeah, I'll start off with my prediction. I'm going to go with Dodgers in 6. I think they just have the offensive firepower that's going to be able to put up a lot of runs, and they have the pitching that can end up closing games out. And also the MVP for me, I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with Kershaw. I'm just going to roll with that. I'm going to say he has his coming out party for the playoffs. He's going to have a huge series he's going to start Game 1, of course. And I'm going to say he also starts probably Game 5 or 6, maybe close out the series in Game 6 if that ends up happening. But yeah, Dodgers in 6 for me. All right, anybody else want to jump in now?
Yeah, I'll kind of balance the board out. I'll take the Rays in 7 based on the strength of their starting pitching. The Rays have had the best pitching in the postseason, and good pitching will always shut down good hitting. And I think one of the keys to the Rays pitching is going to be Charlie Morton. He is on fire right now in the postseason. He's 3-0, a .57 ERA. He'll probably start Game 3, and if necessary, they can throw him in Game 7. I look for the Rays bats to get going a little bit. I don't think they're going to hit 300, but they're going to hit better than 209 that they're hitting right now. I look for Brendan Lau to break out of his slump. My MVP is going to be Charlie Morton, and I like the Rays winning it in 7.
I'm hoping the Dodgers can win it in 6 as well. I think the Dodgers are going to go up 2-0 in and then Tampa's going to fight back, tie it up 2-2. And then the Dodgers are going to take the last two. And my World Series MVP, I'm actually going to go off the board, and I'm going to say it's going to be Will Smith.
Will Smith.
Pretty good. I'm going to be very partisan and sit on the fence. I'm going to say it's going to be over in 6, and I don't know which way. I think that games 1 and 2 will be split. I don't know whether we'll win game 1 or game 2, but I think after 2 games it'll be 1-1, and the series will be decided on games 3 and 4 and how the knock-on effect of the start of Buehler in game 2, and actually how do the Rays fare against sort of Arias, Gonzalez, and May. And if the Rays win it, I'm going to go out of left field and say Austin Meadows. I think he could break out, and actually he could hit quite nicely. And if the Dodgers win it, I'm going to say Justin Turner. I think he plays good defense. He hits well. And actually, it might be an MVP where hitting 300 with sort of 5 or 6 RBIs is enough to win it, rather than your sort of usual 2 or 3 homers. So Meadows and Turner for me, and it'd be over in 6.
All right, I'm gonna go Dodgers in 6, and I think Kershaw gets the MVP. I think he shuts him down in game 1, and he comes back in game 5 with the Dodgers and Rays tied at 2-2. Shuts the Rays down in game 5, and the Dodgers win game 6. And I'm going to say Kershaw gets the MVP, because I don't think either team is going to hit a whole lot. And I think it's definitely going to be a pitcher. And I think Kershaw is finally time for him to exercise the demons of playoffs past.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Kershaw and Dodgers in 6.
Oh, we're on the same page then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got 3-2 Dodgers to Rays here. But it's baseball. We'll see what happens. Anything can happen. So first pitch Tuesday at 8:00 what was it, 8:08? Yeah. Eastern time. So gonna be exciting. Let's roll.
1 a.m. Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. Regardless of the outcome of the series, I'll be pleased to get a bit of sleep.
What are you, 6 hours ahead, right, Joel?
So 5. We're 5. Oh, sorry. We're 5 from the East Coast. Yeah.
You will be 6 actually in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because we turn the clocks
back.
We
will. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because we're the one idiot country that like turns the clocks back and ahead still.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
So a bit of rest and a bit of no more sort of all-nighters, and then telling a woman at work why I've been up all night watching baseball, and she really doesn't sort of understand it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this was fun, guys. See what happens in the series. Maybe have another wrap up show at the end of it to talk about what happened.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So yeah, good luck to your respective teams, of course. And we'll see next Wednesday at the latest if it goes to 7. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening to the pod. We'll be back with more episodes. As I mentioned, doing a recap of this series after the series ends. As always, you can never have too much pod tar. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.